It's a lot of pressure. Hello, thank you all for coming. I'm Ryan Lucier. That's my name. I've come prepared to talk about a few things as options, but I'm kind of more interested in what y'all want to know. If you know me, you know I'll pretty much talk about anything. I made some things this morning or this afternoon that I've actually set up pretty well. I was going to figure out how to assemble like not exactly a watering can, well, not a teapot, but a watering can, which gives me the excuse to not have to make a lid. Which I was worried wouldn't have set up, and in hindsight, the sun is very powerful and dried some of these things more than I expected, so that's pretty awesome. I have a studio here in Austin, no kill. I've been making pots for, I don't know, let's see, 25 so years, maybe making good ones for like 15. I teach part-time at Texas Lutheran University. This semester, drawing 2 and 3, ceramics 1 and ceramics 2. Yeah, it's a lot for an adjunct, right? But I do teach those classes, and so my morning today started very early. 8 a.m. was in Seguin. So if I fall asleep, just let me awake.
You have pass out clay so we can just throw it at you?
Yeah, and if you must throw tomatoes, please take them out of the cans first. I brought some samples of, work that, I've made. I mean, I've made a lot of pots in my life, but I brought a sampling of things like this guy is from 15, 17 years ago. I had a little residency at San Diego State. I think I made that maybe. And this was probably somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. Maybe 9 years ago. So the reason I brought these particular things are to show different options or handle solutions. These are hollow. This is press mold, extruded and darted, pulled, dimpled, extruded. Anything else? So, I don't know. What do you guys want to know about?
How'd you get started?
I used to.
I've seen you work here. I love the craft.
It's been a while, but I used to be able to say, I've worked in the Blanton.
Yeah.
Gift shop. Whatever. Kind of a better place, really, but I have, a list of topics that, we could talk about. Oh yeah, this little guy. Of course, I didn't bring the jar, but because the rest of them, this is like an extra lid, because if you're making lids and you don't make extra, then, well, you just have a bunch of lidless pots, or you have a bunch of extra lids. So, well, this is a cup series, or I just kind of cycled through. I brought some of those. Some pumpkins that I know it's not the season, but in the fall, I don't know if I'll do them again, but they're fun, but, feeling a little redundant about them. But these are fun. I made some buoys too. I didn't bring any of those. I should have, but I've been experimenting a lot with, color, more color with coloring this, crawling crackle glaze. then you start making this off, this color combination on top of this, and then your brain starts to explode, and you need a spreadsheet to like contain the algorithm. But it is kind of fun, in a kind of a cheating way that I will do. I mean, the right way. So I'll tell you the way I do things, and I'll tell you the right way to do things. Okay. The right way to develop color and glaze is, find your base and do your line blends and do all that, or however formula you use. Now the cheating way is, I have this crackle glaze and I'd really like to be red. I really don't feel like adding all this stuff, but I have all this red underglaze. Should we do a test? Nah. Let's just. 25% seems right. And it was. So, it's on something sculptural, so it's like, it's okay, and it turns out okay. I actually think that it lays down a little better on the on underglaze for some reason. I don't know. Maybe some chemists out there tell me why. But maybe it's just a little bit more of a flux that happens, for better or worse.
So I really like your puffy handles.
Oh, thanks.
I'd like to know more about that.
Okay, good.
Do you do puffy handles on the wooden can, or are they extruded? Because you've got puffy handles on the bowl, on the tray.
So you mean this?
Yes, that one, and it's on the tray as well.
So these are puffy.
Yeah. This
is hollow.
Right.
All the handles are hollow, except for obviously these. I have done several series of watering cans in the past, and those are typically hollow handles as well. I wasn't very organized to bring the whole slideshow things, but if you scroll deep enough into probably my Instagram, you can find some of those things. And on those, they're most likely a press mold, similar to something like this. I'll make these, which I admit I'm not a masterful mold maker, but I'm getting better. And I think it's a nice way to go. And I think it's moving forward, I think I want to do more of that. I did bring some extruded handles to kind of construct here, if we get to that. That look, they look like this, not altered. So in their raw form, they're going to be like this. And you're going to be blown away by the really high-tech extruder die that I showed you. Yeah, simple. This is a nice method if you're into that sort of thing. Now, moving forward, I think the smarter way to do things is to make press molds, or if you really want to be smart, do some 3D printing, making master molds and that sort of thing. But this, I made this probably at least 10 or 15 years ago. So it's held up, right? But it's not very sexy, right? But 3/4 plywood, some U-bolts. The tricky part is like getting it to stay centered. I mean, then of course you could even find smarter, there's a whole thing right here, right? This and actually having one of these things, that's super smart. But, when you're low tech in your garage, you make it work. Okay, but that's another smart system. Right? Let's see. I can just start assembling this thing. Ultimately end up like this. And the challenge with these is they just take, they take a long time. And you've got to fingers, toes, and eyes crossed to make sure you're not going to get cracks, and you have to put in, at least an extra little coil in there and really baby it, and you got to worry about the thing. So I think that.
What clay are you using?
So I'm using Armadillo's Buffalo Wallow, which is pretty good, pretty nice clay body. Is anybody else using that?
I just got some.
Anybody having any issues with it? Glaze issues? No? Okay.
Are you?
No, I mean I have and I know folks who have, but I think that's any. I just feel like it's any dark body that like tends to have those. Maybe I'm telling you more than I know. I think, but I feel like if you down the road encounter that you're having problems, try just bisque firing a little hotter, like 03, and it might solve some of those problems. I think some people are having problems when they refire, especially. Somehow those little gases are not finding their way out, and then you're ending up with like little pinholes and blisters and things. But if you're not having those problems, good for you. That's only sometimes. So. And then the trick to these is also cutting them at the correct angle. Yeah.
So how stiff do you let it get before you start cutting them up?
That's a good question. I mean, ideally, all right, so I've kind of made up this imaginary 1 to 10 system, right? It's like 1 being super wet out of the bag and 10 being like bone dry, right? So I like it to be, you know, and if leather hard is like a 7, 6.5, 7. I like it to be a 6.5, 6.5. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, you want it, I want it firm enough that, you know, I can hold it out like that without it being limp, but also soft enough that I can do that, right? So, whatever that means. I didn't bring one, but it's okay. My special knife. You can't buy this. You can't have one. I bought this at Sprouts Market in a 3-pack, and it was like probably $4 for the whole set, and it's my favorite knife. But also, I'm sure like you could find some like other replaceable one or X-Acto knife. These are great. I did say in the thing I was going to share my favorite tools. And here they are. This is it. 5 things. Keep it simple. In fact, you could probably even eliminate a couple of these. I don't know. I just like to keep it simple. So cutting these things, you know, straight or the correct angle can be tricky. I started using, I didn't bring one, but I find that just a metal rib is a really nice tool for cutting things, small things, you know, because it's really the sharpest thing that I think we have in our studios. Never cut myself though, which is nice. So figuring out these angles, you know, I eyeball 45 degrees. That's another reason why you want it pretty firm, because I don't want it to squish. And then of course I still want it to do it. The other challenge with extruding is, especially the ones you make yourself, is you have to remember to keep everything in orientation extruded. Because if I put the bottom of this, they won't necessarily line up. Yeah, now you know all my secrets. So I'll spend a good amount of time like carving these things away, listening to my audiobooks. You know, I don't know. Big fan of audiobooks.
What are you listening to right now?
I don't want to tell you.
Okay. Is it trashy? Okay.
Like post-apocalyptic, you know, garbage. I love it.
Yeah.
Or some sort of like Star Wars thing, probably. Has anybody read the Thrawn trilogies? They're awesome.
The what?
Thrawn, Star Wars. There's 2 trilogies. Highly recommend if you're a Star Wars fan. So good. You can nerd out with me. Anyway, I won't bore you with like cutting these things up because I have this pre-made one that was from, I mean actually this one's a little dried out, but you know, it's a demo, so who cares. These things just go in the
So when you said direction, is it because the dye is just a little different?
Yeah, I mean it's just, you know, like
oh, okay.
the way I made it was yeah, I'm not perfect, you know. So that's, yeah. So there's always going to be like, if I look at them, I can always find like some. It's not as obvious here. I just made a series and like I can see every single one. There's like a little thin spot, but I got it in the same place on every one, so that's success. So, you know, I get these in place and then I let them set up and, you know, I'll try to, ooh, that's going to actually just, ooh, lucky me. That was totally accidental. It's probably not. Probably should wet it, but it's pretty, I don't think it's going to work, but I'm probably going to break it. It's okay. Time travel. Spray bottle. Go into the past, to the future. Told you I'm a nerd. That's not gonna work, but it's alright. It's a good idea, right? Surgically soften an area when necessary. That's the thing about demos, they're always so like time constraining. Yeah, we'll see if that works. Might be able to bend it a little bit so that we can get it to total fit. Or just crack, let it crack. It's only pottery. No one's gonna die. I met a cardiologist once. He told me, he found out I made pottery, and he said, that is so interesting. I would love to do that when I retire. We should do it now, right? But then, you know, time went on, I was revealed and discovered he was a cardiologist, and I said, that is so interesting. I would love to do that when I retire. Just dabble, volunteer. Sense of purpose without any accountability. So, I mean, you know, clearly there are things in life that matter more than others.
To certain people.
Yeah, no one's gonna die, right? If we have a bad day as ceramic artists, the worst thing that happens is maybe a handle goes on crooked. No one's gonna die. We're okay.
I don't know, that knife slips just right.
We try to get the angle right. Eyeball it. Ooh, too much. Oh, maybe you're right. Eyeball construction. Hand-tied automotive. See how it goes. You know, and then you can just fudge it. Really pottery. Let's see. That might work. Usually that's a little hard. That's a little drier than I like, but yeah, it's like a little bit.
That's where coils come in.
Well, yeah, you're right. Coils do help a little, but the closer I can get it, the less of a gap I get, and then the prouder I can be, or whatever. But yeah, if you let it get too dry, you know, then you get these like, it starts to crack when you try to cut it. So there is kind of a window. Best practices.
Ryan, when you first started doing that kind of stuff where you had to cut it at angles and fit things, did you go through a phase of trying to actually figure out the angles?
Yeah, but you know what you end up discovering is as long as you make the angles the same, you're okay. Like they have to be the same angle. Finish carpenter.
Oh, there you go.
If they're not the same angle, then one side is going to be like.
As a finished carpenter, you never used caulk?
Yeah, it's like being a grinder welder. So if you cut that angle too sharp, which I made all these mistakes, so I know. And then, you know, this one is say more shallow, then you know this is going to be longer than this one, and they won't line up. So whatever, you know, if you want something like this to happen, or this, these still have to be pretty darn close to the same angle. Although, if you look, you know, if it's still a little bit soft, you can finesse a little bit of that curve a little bit. You know, it's clay. It's a little forgiving, but you can't get away with everything. I don't know that I'd pursue this again, by the way. Darting is just another opportunity for failure. Cracking. So, I don't know. It's fun, and I've done a lot of things in the past around it for fun or for interest. But I don't know that I would try to create a business model around darting. Unless you were like a tailor. But that's another thing. Darting in clay, it's just like another, hey, how can I add complexity with no value to this? No perceived value. We can talk all night about perceived value, but that's boring. Yeah, whatever. Let's see. This is, give me a little more water, Jason. A straw, maybe, I don't know. Like, it's in there somewhere. It's all right. I just want to dampen that so that it, I mean, the nice thing about this is it doesn't have to like fire and live, and it would totally crack, by the way. Oh, yeah. So I just made this today.
Oh, that's nice.
And I do trim things sometimes, but only if it makes sense to trim things. So I feel like I'll trim it if it's going to add interest and value, but sometimes it seems unnecessary. Like if I were to trim a foot under there, it would feel like I was just doing it for the sake of trimming a foot under there. Like, I don't really know. I mean, maybe I would put this, build a chuck and spin that so I could smooth it with like maybe a metal rib or something. But I don't think.
So do you use like a rib to shape the bottom where it hits the wheel? Or,
What's that?
So you try and finish the shape where it meets the wheel?
Usually, I mean, especially like production stuff. But I also, but I did bring something with a foot to prove that I sometimes. Okay, guys? Look at that. Thoughtful foot. Proof. No signature stuff. Who knows if I really made it? But I did. Promise. This was fun. This is the cone 5 to 14 porcelain that Armadillo makes. If you used it, you know. If you know, you know. And it is. It's great stuff. At cone 10. Although I'm pretty sure this is, I'm trying to remember back. This came out of my cupboard, by the way, so you can't have it. I feel like I developed some glaze, this glaze, because I really wanted a satin matte surface on that porcelain because of that. I mean, it was real specific about these. I didn't really pursue this very long. I brought these to Clayfest like several years ago, and everyone ignored them, and they were just like, critical glaze. And I'm like, okay, well, I know they're quiet, but I love them. I just know, I don't know, touch it before you go. It's mine, don't break it. I don't know, the dimple's just nice. They're, you're drinking and, it hugs you back a little bit. I just, I don't know, call them little hug me, hold me's. But yeah, it's a nice clay. And I was firing that to like maybe 7, and then developed the glaze to like live there. And to get that satin at lower temperatures, you got to put in some like calcite kaolin and stuff like that. So if you want to talk about glaze calc stuff, we can talk about that. Jason had asked about these hollow handles, and these I'm pretty sure were, again, like, don't do it this way, do it a smarter way. Like I'll cut out like a paper template, like makeup paper template, and then just sit there and fold it. Like, I guess I have some clay, I'll just make something. Hard to, like, miming things. Of course, it's not going to be the best. Because, little surface area, I can throw a rolling pin, but I'll just pound it out.
There is There's one over here if you need it.
Is there? Where?
It's a studio full of stuff.
I know, but you know,
All the toys.
And that's
It's fine. I don't. It doesn't.
it's the cleanest down there though.
It's just. I mean, just to get it relatively even. Perfect. Something like that thick. I used to just roll these out without using like slats or anything, but I've since the past several years started using slats because it's way smarter. I shouldn't be so lazy. I'll try to replicate that. Normally I'd have like a template, like made out of something really high tech, like a cereal box or something, or pizza box, not corrugated. Yeah, maybe a little thinner. The thinner it is, the more it's got to behave for you. I did promise a handle demo, didn't I? That's why you're all here. Heard of a handle before, right? Let's see what those look like. Something like that. Who tore up our wedging table? My students have tables at school that are just like shredded, and it's like, who are these people that don't know their own strength? They're just like tearing up the table. That's crazy. Let's see. Templates are smart. Freehanding is dumb, but here we are. Close enough. Right. I mean, you know, you'd end up with something. A bunch of material fatigue into it would be better. You know, you'd end up with something like that. Then I'd sit there so you can see what I'm doing, elevated view. You know, and then you just sit there and kind of. Of course, if it's a template, you get two that are the same, and you get a hollow form, and things usually work out. Typically, the interior gets a little tricky, but.
You can dart it.
So yes, you can. And what I didn't bring one, but I've also made a version of that handle where I throw one on the wheel, and then without a bottom, and then squish it into a whatever that shape is, oval, and then cut a little, and then pinch it, you know, and then a little roundy at the ends, and then pinch it round, and then up, and that's the same thing, right? Huh? It's a lot of. It's too much work, right? Nobody appreciates it. That's why I just extrude now. Nobody loves it, you know? But I love it. You're here. You might do it. But then, again, the smarter thing to do would be to make one of these that you like. Make a press mold. Right? Smart people do these things, not me. Labor of love. Part of it's indecision, and also what has prevented me from doing those sort of things is like, then you're committing. Not really, because you could just have a library of these handles, I guess. But it's like, I don't want all my handles to be exactly the same, and I want them to feel a little bit loose. But in reality, like, you could just have, you know, it's like track homes. It's like, all these houses are different. Nope, that one's like that one, and like that one, and you know, they're just not close enough together to tell. So maybe that's a weird analogy. But. So anyway, you end up with some more beautiful version of that. But that's the idea, you know, and you just, or you could even, I didn't bring a piece, but the pink, like, well, it doesn't matter what color it is, but that styrofoam, it is pink, like insulation stuff, and it's just styrofoam. And I love that stuff for, whether if I'm sculpting, like making, you know, a form off of that. But you could also cut people do it with wood too, you know, you take your piece of wood and you cut cut this shape out of it, right? And then you can press your slab into it. I'm sure you guys have seen that before. If not, You can press your side. Anyway, you could do it with, I think styrofoam's nice because it's light and you can have a lot of them and it's easy to cut. And, that's how I would do it again, and that's how you should do it if you want to do that. Don't do it like this. Or do the first one like this. Or just sculpt one solid in the mold. There's smart ways to do things. I don't know why I do things so hard.
So would you make a pressable plaster or this?
Plaster. Yeah, I would make a plaster mold, I think. Better than this. Better than I don't know.
Working here.
I don't know. I get these ideas and these wild hairs, and like, you know, you get, it's like I want to make this tube, and I get this piece of tubing, and the right way to do it is to fill it with plaster and then make a mold. And I'm like lazy and cutting corners, and I'll just put the thing in there, and it like floats a little bit, or it like moves a little bit, and then, you know, I lose a little bit of the ribbing because it's too tight, or I didn't mix my plaster correctly. People are really smart with plaster mold making, but it takes a lot of patience, right? There are mold makers in here. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You're a good mold maker. Good mold maker back there. Yeah. So, talk to Melanie. She'll tell you all about it. So back to this. Wow, you're never gonna get our 2 hours back. He's gonna talk for 2 hours. I don't know. I'll do this a lot, like constantly dampening surfaces. Even though it doesn't have to survive because it's just a demo. But that's what I do. You know, I like things to. I'm really particular about like the timing, you know, to mitigate cracking. You know, let's say that was the correct angle exactly. Like what the way that I will attach that or make attachments, I'm gonna kind of kiss it with it. Well, that wasn't very good, but better than that. I'll scratch this up a little bit, and this is another little habit that I do that not everybody needs to do this, but it's like adding a tiny bit of moisture, even though I'm gonna go over it with a brush afterwards anyway. I don't use any kind of slip or magic water or whatever. It is pretty good stuff, and like if this was porcelain, I probably would, because that stuff is just conspiring against us. Isn't it? It's so nice though, isn't it? Porcelain. Love it. Stoneware though, a lot more forgiving. But if I were to be more diligent and make so you write this stuff down, because this is like, again, me telling you the way I do it and then telling you the right way to do things, is if you make like a magic water, it doesn't even have to be magic water, but a slip, I'll typically throw in some sodium silicate, a little bit of, you know, my dried clay body, and some calcined clay. Calcined kaolin if that's all I have, but calcine your own clay body. If you don't know this trick, many of you do, but if you don't, you want a bulletproof, I mean, you can use this stuff on bisqueware, basically. Is sodium silicate, a drop of water, a little bit of your clay body, and like, you know, pulverized, and then pulverize some of, you know, you get your little scraps, pulverize a bunch of it, put it in your bisque kiln, and you've got calcined clay body, and it's going to match your color in your seams, and you're not going to have any cracks. Okay, now you know. The way I do it is just to put a little water, not a lot, right? Because cracking, expansion, just enough to make it sticky. And then also, you know, this is just giving me the indication of like telling me where to scratch on here. Yeah. I know. Ooh, who cares? Let's see. I don't really worry about it too much because I'm gonna brush it over and clean it up. But I love these things. If you don't have one of these things, go get one of these things. Yeah. It's like surgical. I usually have a little smaller than this.
you put some kind of hole in the.
You're getting ahead of me. Spoiling it. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, I do put a hole. You have to put a hole. I mean, you don't have to put a hole,
Yeah,
but
I know what happens if you don't.
well, if you fire it super slowly, which who does? Who wants to do that? You can get away with it, but you know, you are kind of rolling the dice. I used to make, or have made. I don't say I'm not dead yet. I guess I could still make more if I wanted to. Like, okay, I know. So hollow handle or hollow lids like this, right? Hole. I've made some very large, monumental lids for bigger jars and things. And I used to be real arrogant about it and be like, I don't need to put a hole in that. And I hear, you know, off in my patio, I can hear pop! And I'm like, that's another one. Might want to consider those holes. Stubborn, you know. Stubborn bastard, YouTube. Anyway, love that to death. A little bit of water, although that's probably okay. Like this, I just grabbed this brush from the studio this morning or this afternoon, so it's not like I actually have a brush that I always use. I don't know that it's any better than any brush, but it's like the devil I know. So I know how it bends, and I know how to finesse it. This one's pretty good. And then in reality, I probably this is actually the last step. I usually do the whole spout and everything first, but here we are. Oh, that's crooked. Okay, so it's going to be a little crooked. So, and then, you know, in real life, I would have really spent a fair amount of time making sure that those angles and that connection was within a tolerance. Gaps are. I don't want to have to put a coil in there for a couple reasons. One, I tend to let this get a little drier than ideal to put a coil on. Does that make sense? Like it's too dry. Like the coil is at a 2 and this is at a 7, and we like to attach things at 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, maybe a 4 to a 6, but anything more than that is risky, I think. So brush, go around the thing, and if I were to have made that a nicer connection, then it would be a pretty smooth transition. Wow, this is all, so don't worry about that. But, like, you know, I'm getting better each year, each disaster. Okay. All right, so I cleaned that up pretty well. Not perfect. I don't worry about it too much. I'll go in and wait for it to dry, and I'll kind of sand it with like a wet, not too much of a sponge, a little bit, and then after the disc, maybe I'll sand anything that really needs it. It's usually pretty good. For these guys, ooh, that's dry now. Oh, I put these in the sun today for like 20 minutes, or maybe it was like 2 hours. I don't know. But they dried out a little bit more than I like. I didn't even think they'd be dry enough for the demo, but here we are. We'll cut.
So when you do that handle holes, you do it from the inside?
What?
You were talking about putting holes in.
Oh, you know what I'll do? Yeah, I'll take like a little drill bit, like a whatever little guy, and normally I'll just like find, you know, you can go anywhere, right? But I'll tend to just do it right there because it works. Like,
Thank you.
Yeah. Otherwise, it'll make it find its own hole, right? For these, I mean, I was gonna like do this whole demo, but I think you guys understand They're in a closed form, maybe, for the most part. So I throw these with a bottom, even though I'm going to cut it out, just for stability. Like when I take it off, you don't have to, but I've done it both ways and found that it's easier. Either way, I have to do this kind of cleanup. Takes forever. Should make a press mold. Ah! Check your reclaim bins. Who reclaims in here? Oof. I don't. No, shame. I'm ashamed. You know why though? A couple reasons. If it was porcelain, I probably would. But then again, maybe I wouldn't, because I don't know. You worry about like contaminants in your reclaim, and then that's what I worry about. Contaminants in my reclaim. Not even little blades and things. That's a whole other thing. But if I get contaminated reclaim, then I mix that with a bunch of stuff, and then I make a bunch of stuff. Is it really worth the $5 I saved to do it? And then also on top of that, I only have so many of these left in my life, and I don't want to. And like, how is that worth the 50 cents that I saved?
Pug milk.
You know? Yeah, but who has room for that? Yeah, well, you. I did. I'll tell you, I did have
those
a
little
pug.
shampoo pug mills, and they're not even de-airing.
It's not the pug mill. It's all the damn reclaim that piles up, and the walls start closing in. In my life, it's valuable real estate, right? I mean, some people don't even have room for an extra table. Where, I don't know. Clay is cheap enough for now.
Contaminants.
Huh?
Like what?
Anything. Dust. It's like you know me. No, I don't
I'm
know.
really curious.
Stuff.
Like, what kind of stuff would get in there that would ruin a whole batch of cockroaches?
Oh, you're talking about the contaminants in the clay. She's asking what gets into the clay that ruins the clay.
Well, if you've got a system, you can create systems, right? Like you can have buckets with lids and do all that. But if you're me and your reclaim bucket is basically also your trash. Because I don't reclaim, I can do that. But it's just not as clean for 50 cents a pound or whatever it is.
Do you know why I like to do it? I like to do it because it's process, and so when I get ready to start a new body of work, first thing I do is process the clay, and
because that's
It's a
wedging
process.
for you though. But that's because if you have a porcelain studio,
yeah.
it makes a lot of sense to have a pug mill, especially because you're saving your risk. Because all clay should be wedged before you throw it, but some clays like this is pretty forgiving. You're still gonna pound it around, which is still your risk. But porcelain, if you've thrown porcelain, you know that if you don't wake it up and wedge it, forget it. You're wobbling all over the place. So it makes sense to have a pug mill with porcelain, or even
The
the
dillo.
dillo, which
Yeah.
is kind of
The
porcelain.
nice thing about dillo,
Porcelain ruins pug mills.
Does it?
it sharpens the blades for sure.
Does it?
Yeah,
Why is that?
it rots it out.
What's
They make a stainless steel one that.
what is
stands
it
up
about
there.
it that does? I don't.
Yeah, the regular ones.
I'm here to learn. What's going on? What happens?
That's just the chemicals in the porcelain.
Um,
Wears through the metal.
Because my experience with another, I tried the reclaim thing. I wanted to be a good person, good steward of this earth. But what happened was, it's like and I don't know if I'm the only one, but it's like you've got buckets of reclaim, you got enough, you slake it out, and then, whether it's your job or tasked to a helper, and then somehow it just gets forgotten and it re-hardens again. And then you gotta start all over again, and now you're living in the mess, and you could just have 3 more wheels over there, or something, or a table, or a wear rack, or any other thing. That's just me. Anyway, so this is not the prettiest at this point, but what's that?
I said, you're not gonna do it, that's the bottom.
I don't know. I do. This is me confessing. Like I feel guilty that I don't.
I appreciate it.
You know,
You do
like,
you.
I feel guilty, but I also my wrists hurt.
Yeah.
So, thank you for those of you who do recall. And recycle. Just kidding. I recycle. So also with these, I like them to, this is a little on the firm side, and I wouldn't count on this surviving my abuse right now, but I like it to, so it'll cup and it'll cradle that form, sort of, because it's a little hard, but maybe I can do this. Baptized. All right, I'll set that over there for now. I should have done that while I was talking. Here's a trick that some of you may already know. I'm just here to share all of my tricks. Some of you may already know this, but if you don't, and this applies to all clay, I'll cut that pretty close to, the angle, and it'll be pretty straight, but there'll be some undulation in there. So a little trick to just get it flush or flat, flush. It's just, a little water and do this little, and it again, it has to be at a certain firmness. If it's too soft, it's just gonna, if it's too hard, then when you cut it, it's gonna crumble. But, you just kind of do this until your tables are all moldy. Yeah. And then,
What's on your tabletop?
I'm breaking it in.
No, I mean, yours.
What tabletop? Yeah,
What do you have on top?
Oh, shamefully, some really crappy 3/4 inch plywood that desperately needs to be replaced.
So no canvas or anything?
I hate it. I hate canvas.
Me too. So get a 1/4 inch.
Although that is
MDF.
MDF is good. Yeah, the canvas actually would be good for this because it does have a little bit of a texture and it's abrasive. But how did canvas become the thing in ceramic studios when it's like the dustiest, dirtiest surface?
Moldiest.
Well, it's the. Am I students here? No. I'm like super, pretty laid back guy. Did you make dust? And then I become a monster. I didn't know. You knew.
I found students cutting through my canvas all the time.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's what was over here. Is like, how did you do that? Like what? Brand new scalpel. Anyway, so that'll give you a nice flat edge, and if you cut your angles correctly, meaning the same, like it should match up pretty nicely. But who cares, right? Because we're just going to make press molds, right? So I could have done a better job of cutting that, but because it's not even, and so it's going to respond to pressure differently. But I don't know. Is there a time?
Oh, the clock is gone. It's 7:53.
Is there like a finish time?
We don't go past 9 usually.
I'll try to wrap it up. Again, like I'm usually a little more thoughtful. Although this was pretty good. Shouldn't have said that. Like I try to think about proportions. Like even that, like. That's a whole thing. So I might actually do it on this side because I like it to be a little proud. Proud pots. Someone told me I made proud pots once, so I just go with it. Which is also why, ask me what clay I use, Buffalo Wallow, but I asked for the firm. If you guys use it and you use the soft, I don't know how you make anything out of it, but laying it on a table for 3 days. It's like mud. So I don't know. It's just a little firmer, a little less water. It holds up, which is probably why my wrists hurt so much, but it also, I just need my pots to stand up, and that really super wet, soupy stuff just doesn't do it. You know, if you're making platters all day, like, yeah, that's easy. But, you know, if you wanted to stand up, you know, like if I didn't bring any, but, you know, with the, you know, I have like kind of, I do a lot of things, like I said, you know, I make, you know, I have Rhyno Clayworks, and in the beginning I sort of set that out to be, separate myself from a brand, you know, so that I could do kind of two things, like the art stuff and the production stuff. And I don't think I've done a great job at separating them. I'm still trying, but I'll still just like make something new, and I'll be like, I have this Rhyno Clayworks stamp. Let's put that on there. And I don't know, it's still just me, especially now that it is just me, and I have no intentions of expanding and hiring staff again, and only because I've realized that, I mean, I think some people can do it well, but I just don't think that handmade ceramics are a smart business model for scalability. Now, if you're someone like making your work, this is just me, okay, my thoughts. You know, if you're like a Heath Ceramics or East Pottery or something like that, like their business model makes sense because it's systems and processes for people that don't necessarily have to enter in with a high level skill set, and they can develop it while they're there. But you know, you can create a repeatable product that is, you know, consistent and really nice, and somebody doesn't have to spend a year in your studio learning how to throw pots to be useful, you know, and then get bored and leave, which happens, right? I mean, I don't, you know, you can't blame people for that. Bridget did an okay job at it. But those were like, you know, that was the 90s.
Started in the 80s.
I can't imagine trying to start a handmade ceramics wheel thrown business in 2024, like from the ground, like wholesale.
I don't know how people come out of school and do it because everything is so expensive.
Right. Same.
Including
yeah.
the real estate to do it. You know?
Yeah, I know. All right, so once again, here we are. Oh, what I would also do, something really smart. You make the holes first. Ask me how I know. It's real hard to do them afterwards. You've done it. That's why you make a series, you know? Some are, you know, it's like pancakes. The first one's for the dog. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I'll do that, but just to give me the sense of, like, what should do? Camera review, I guess, whatever, I don't know. Just to tell me where to scratch later. I didn't bring a drill bit, but I can't remember, and I can't remember the size that I typically use. It's like, is that big? So I don't know if this is even gonna work, but I tend to do like, and that seems to work. I don't have a formula. I'm not like a, you know, hydropologist or something. Yeah. I've already told you more than I know.
Okay, I have a question.
I'm ready.
Okay, if that is a watering can
Yes.
and not a teapot,
Oh, that was
why
my
are you
question.
cutting little tiny holes when you could just cut
A hole.
a hole? Because
Well, I've done that. I find that this is just a little cleaner. Like if I'm using, I mean, I'm not going to use this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm usually a drill bit, so that's cleaner. You could, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like you could.
because
You
for
could-
teapot that would strain the tea. I get that.
Well, I don't. So I don't know. You see all those guys on YouTube and Instagram. They use those little tiny hole makers, and it looks cool. So I do it. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sure you guys, if your feed is anything like mine, you get a lot of those like U-shaped teapot guys. Aren't they just incredible? Just incredible. Like the way they use that like stick and the slurry,
Yeah.
and they're like, my thing would crack if I did that.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing. Imagine. Anyway, they do it.
Make believe.
they've got like a million little holes, right? And they've got a little cone tool that gets rid of that problem, and they're so smart. They should come here. You're right. No, you could make a giant hole just the same, and I have done that. But I find that like when you look in through here, it's definitely not as pretty. It's like, I just can't cut a hole. Maybe I need practice, but I can't cut a hole like follow this. I don't really exactly know what that line is. So.
Template, a cardboard template.
But it's never the same.
Oh, I see.
It's never. It's just. If I was making press mold. Press molds. Here we go.
So a good reason for your little holes, like if some leaves happen to fall into your watering can, they won't get stuck in the spout. It'll be easier to get them out.
I'm going home. That's a good idea. So I'm going to go home and work on this stuff.
I've had lots of leaves stuck in watering cans.
Yeah, there's one I wanted to bring tonight, and I looked at it and I'm like, that was left outside for a while. I don't have time to put that in the dishwasher to clean it. That's pretty gross. Can't bring that out. I'm being so embarrassed. But then, and the thing is, like, no one's going to use these things because they're expensive. Right? Oh God. When I was in San Diego, give me Tricia if you're watching. I had some friends, and I had made a series of these, kind of at the same time I was making this probably, but it was a watering can, and I had made them a lot more complex, like without bottoms, and I, what's that shape, ovaled them, and then, I'd cut the bottom like similar to this, and then I'd put the slab and do all this stuff, and I think I used the same texture. And so they were in like the rebar thing, and they were really nice, soda fired, gorgeous things. And I gave one to them for wedding present. And I happened to say one time when I was at their house when they were having all this stuff, it's interesting. I didn't realize when you got married you got so many breakable things. And my friend's like, you should mention that. And had it out on the deck, and I guess someone had accidentally kicked it, and it broke. And it broke pretty cleanly. I was pretty proud. It was only like 3 pieces, right? And I was like, oh, well, that's not bad. We can fix it. It's not best practice, but we can, B6000 or whatever product, some kind of JB weld it back together. Well, my wife already threw it away. I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. No problem. You get a toaster next time. No, it's fine. But they're breakable, right? And that's the point. It's like, you got nice things and you're like, I want to use them. I try to use everything that I have in my collection, but some things just stay in the vault. It's like,
especially with kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You gotta give them the training pots, the ones I make. It's like, who cares? Break all those. I don't offer them for sale, but I did make a little, some little espresso cups. They're basically like this size, this shape, but little pewees. I get a little finger in there. I got like one in 7 or 8 colors each, and I'll give them to my daughter for be careful, push that back on the table. Special cup. Pretty good. Haven't broken it yet, so. But if they do, they do.
My daughter was 3 when she was helping me clean up the table, and we had this wedding gift that was a beautiful little bowl that had roosters opposite facing. I probably told you the story.
Oh,
and she was helping me clean up. She said, "Mommy, what do you want to do with this?" I said, "Throw it in the sink." Do you know?
Oh, your fault.
My fault. No. She literally threw it in the sink.
Yeah.
End of story. End of bowl.
Well, and everything else in the sink.
She felt terrible. She was crying.
Oh, yeah.
I laughed.
Did you yell at her?
Huh? No, I have.
Or your nose in it?
No. I knew it was me the minute it came out of my mouth.
I know. We have, I would say, not done a great job of childproofing our house yet, but our daughter seems to be pretty smart about boundaries and careful with things. So far, so good. I mean, not to mention that like we have precarious crap everywhere. We do have a little gate for like, you know, our like this area where we have like our studio, like for like drawing and painting, and, which is not my office. I got kicked out of my office because that's, you know, nursery. It's okay. I'm not salty. I mean, I have the whole garage, so I guess it's fair.
So what has been your clay journey? Like, how'd you get started?
Okay. Shut the camera off. Off the record. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, there's kind of a couple stories, I guess. Which one do I like? To impress a girl? Is that the one? It's funny enough, I feel like I'm incriminating myself for telling these stories. I did an apprenticeship. Went to school in Maine, Rhyno for a year. They didn't really have, didn't have what I wanted, I guess. So I set out to find a potter. I don't know. I guess in a way, maybe I was trying to impress a girl. I don't know. Edit that. But I met these people out that live like, I don't know, 45 minutes into the forest of, John, if you're listening, if you find this, call me. I'd love to talk to you. And they were super nice. Like, you know, I mean, back then there was no internet, and it was probably like 99. And I decided I wanted to make pottery, but they didn't have any classes at Rhyno. And I was an art and major there. So I went in the phone book to find a potter, and I couldn't find one, but I found like this art supply store, which turned out to be just a frame shop, right? And I went there in person and said, "Do you know any potters?" And they said, "Well, there might be this one," and I think I got their contact or something, and I called them, went out to their place in the middle of nowhere, and they liked me enough, I guess, and said, "Listen, you know, we can't afford to hire anyone, but we can take an apprentice, which means no money, but you can come anytime you want. The door's always open." Yeah, and then, you know, semester ended. I dropped out of school, lived with them for, I don't know, half a year or so. Maybe I went to Florida for a little bit. And then came back up for winter, you know, in Maine. Always smart. Did that, then went back to my parents, you know, trying to figure out what I was going to do before applying to different schools. I ended up going to UMass to start with. But, you know, in that time, I found a potter in my town, worked for him, and as I was like registering my car at like our town hall, which is literally like as big as this table, like Lebanon, Maine, it's like this big. And there was a little candy dish, and I picked it up. I was like, "Ooh, who's this guy?" And like, "Oh, he's up there." So I went to his house, you know, and he gave me this job throwing pots. It was like my first real pot throwing job, and he was making these little dishes and little pate dishes or whatever, 1 pounders. I can make some. I've made them, and they had a little strap handle extruded. And I think he was paying me $1 a piece for them, and I got to a point where I could make like 8 of them an hour, and I was like, "I've made it!" You know, I was like, "It's more money than I ever made, you know, pushing carriages at Market Basket, or nobody ever made commission at Radio Shack," you know. So, I don't know. It felt good, right? And then I outgrew that one, so he handed me off to some other production potter that he had used to work with. And I worked for them, and I got a lot of good training there, because it was like a little bigger, kind of about the size of Sunset Canyon. You know, a few potters and, you know, bigger operation. And then I decided I was going to go work at this place in Greece, on the island of Paros. And I left after working there for a year. And then, I think I just made, sorry, Jamie. I think I upset him because my job wasn't there waiting for me when I got back. That was fine. I had a good time out in the islands and backpacking around Southern Europe and Morocco and stuff. Pockets full of euros. And, so anyway, yeah, that got soft enough to be able to contour there. Hopefully I got that. The reason why I usually do this before this, because it's easier to line this up. I'm a little crooked here. I can fudge it a little bit. Try to get everything in line if you can, but things shift, you know. Timeline, then I did the Grease thing. I was going to have all these pictures, but I had to dig things out, get organized. What am I doing? I use a sponge. This is usually not this messy, actually, to be honest with you. I got busy chatting. I will then come here and very carefully and thoughtfully press this in against the pot. I'm not doing a good job of it here, but I do try to preserve that little like bead there. It's sort of a. I'm not necessarily trying to. I mean, you know, back in these days when I was really making these like mechanical, you know, plumbing inspired whatever things, like I was really trying to like cultivate that. I'm just trying to like suggest it here, and then also just have some like, you know, some clean, defined edges. That's my intention. So I don't care if it looks exactly like it's a boiler or anything. It's implied. So I don't know how to sell those pots. To get it, I'm making one. Let's see, what else did I do? I'll come back, I don't know, I guess probably made more pots for more potters. You know, I've worked in my 20s, I probably worked for at least a dozen to 2 dozen different potteries around New England. And then I went to UMass, the summer staff at Watershed for a summer. Sorry, Watershed, they got real mad at me. No, you don't want me as a reference. I got a job up the hill at Sheepshead River Pottery against my contract. Had a meeting with the director. They've forgiven me, mostly, but don't use me as a reference. Non-compete.
It's a totally different crew there now, so.
I know. And I don't know, Lynn was the director then. If you ever met her, she's super nice anyway. She's fine. Edit that. Edit all this. So what else? Then I left and moved to San Diego shortly after UMass. Worked in solar. Had a job, real job working in solar. But also found studio space at San Diego State, which was pretty awesome. Thank you, Richard and Joanne. Because I had contacted Richard and asked where the graduate students were finding studio space, because it's different, you know, it's out there, out here, same thing. Like in New England, it's like, if you go to school, like you can always find space in like an old mill building or whatever. Like, you know, it's like all these places, but it's hard to find space, so. Anyway, Richard Burkett, he's like, emailed me back. He's like, well, we have a resident artist that's leaving, and if you want, there's space available, like, in 2 weeks. I'm like, that's serendipitous timing. So that was awesome place. If you get a chance to go check it out, can you see? And then I moved here. Really wanted to get back into clay. Found Bridget. Went and worked for her. Had a good time. Then worked for a potter in Seguin. Wall glass. I'm sure I'm skipping some things in between here, but it's a long story. And through that relationship is actually how I am teaching at TLU now. So, that's kind of you get credit for that. Because I called Bridget long after, or shortly after, I don't know, sometime after, working at Bridget's, and when I was like wanting to come back and make pots again, and for whatever reason, times are tough. She couldn't take me, but she referred me to this guy Walt, and I would go down and throw pots for him. This was just before I started Rhyno Clayworks.
He borrowed some of our staff for a little while, but we had gotten down to so few people that we couldn't spare anybody when he needed you.
Yeah, whatever it is, it all worked out. And it was like one of those butterfly effect sort of things. You're like, how am I doing? How did this happen? And you kind of trace it back. That was a weird sequence of events that led to kind of an awesome experience. Which is kind of how I feel about my whole clay journey, really. It's just like a lot of good timing, I think. I don't know. I've been lucky, I think. Although, maybe I should have gone into medicine. I don't know. Sometimes you wonder. You're like, is this really a good life? It's a good life. It's good to be here.
When did your identity change from like a hired potter to an artist?
I was always making things like for myself, but it's like, how do you sell things, right? How do you have the courage? And I think it was actually working with Walt, because he'd done a lot of things over the years. He was one of those guys that I think I met him at a time where it was the best time. He passed away, I don't know, like 2016 or 2017. But he was one of those guys that if you met him maybe like in the 80s or 90s, you probably had a different opinion. I think it was like a really tough businessman, and doing a lot of shows, and he had four or six big gas kilns, and all these potters working. Thanks for coming. All these potters working for him and stuff. So it's imagine just a lot of stress and just kind of a thing. And then when I met him, he just had one guy and had a little gallery in San Antonio, and just easy life, right? Or easier and less stress. So I got to have, I feel like, a better relationship. And I think I'll meet people in the building. They'll have sort of some negative things to say, and I'm like, well, I had a nice experience. So, I don't know. That was fortunate. Okay, so I do this. I made a couple of these. I've never actually done it this way. Usually either do a closed form or at the very least make a really small hole. But I thought, that's small. It'll work. Yeah, so that'll work. Also, I typically would pop that on the wheel and trim that round a little bit. And then, I guess you could make a press mold for this, but I probably wouldn't, because I kind of like making these. So, and they're not really a big deal. You just throw a little close one. And then I take my 1/4 inch drill bit. I like that size. Anything smaller, I've found your glaze holes fill up. So I think 1/4 inch is the smallest that I will go these days when I'm doing things. I might even go whatever the size. I'm not good at fractions, but whatever the slightly larger size of that. I'll do that for things like planter holes and things like that, because it's just a pain in the butt when your hole gets clogged with glaze. But then you got to sit there with like a bit and water and, you know.
I have a suggestion.
Huh?
For the teapot holes you're talking about.
Yeah.
So mine would do that. So I finally got to where I would.
Wax it.
No,
No.
I would take a wet sponge before I glaze the pot, and I would saturate the area that have little holes from the inside. And then when I glazed, it wouldn't take in that area a whole lot of glaze. There you go. And I also bumped it in so it didn't match the same curve, and so it wouldn't fill up with glaze. There you go.
However, I'm trying to solve this problem. Trying something new today. Can't do that as a cardiologist.
Do you also do comedy on the side?
If you're laughing, you're learning. Or listening, or whatever the people say. I don't know. I just don't know how else to be. I know sometimes the jokes fall flat, but yeah, just keep moving. I don't even know. I guess that's the right size. All right, so I'll attach this first. Probably shouldn't have done that. All right, what other questions do you have?
Are you showing your work in galleries or stores?
Good question. Right now, no. I was for a while, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it anymore. But I was doing a fair bit of wholesale for a while. But again, back to the not very scalable. It works. I feel like wholesale is great if you've got helpers, you know. But if you're on your own and you're the guy or girl that has to do everything, and suddenly now you're also doing all the things for half the money, it doesn't really make sense. And on top of that, you're paying money to go to places to get these orders, to then sell it at half price. It's just like, I don't know. I remember my biggest year. I mean, that was when I had help. I leased a building in South Lamar and like had some, you know, employees and stuff. And I was like, I never worked harder in my life for less money.
Wow.
And I'm like, what am I doing? Can I run your business? Can I do your business? You know, like a business that I don't know anything about. And you know, because it changes, right? And then you end up, you're managing people, and you're doing a different role. Like you're not Ryan the Potter anymore. You're Ryan the business manager. And I mean, you're still managing a business when you're self-unemployed, but you're like, it's different. You could make different choices. You're not making stressful choices, right? You're like, I can say no to things. And my thought on the gallery thing, I don't know. I fluctuate on this. There are good gallery relationships, but there are a lot of bad gallery relationships. I think that some of that is probably changing a little bit. I mean, a good gallery is like, you know, selling your work and like promoting you and kind of getting you out there. But there are plenty of galleries that are like, wouldn't it be so fun to have a gallery? And then they have no skin in the game, and they've got all your stuff, and it's, I mean, you know, and it's like tied up, and you know, maybe they don't pay you on time. And, so in that sense, like I would much rather do like wholesale than gallery relationships, because at least you get paid up front with wholesale, you know, whereas galleries are just like, wouldn't it be nice if we had a gallery filled with pottery and, you know, but some are, you know, you want a gallery that's like hungry, right? Which a lot of them are. I don't know. And I guess if I start making, like, and continue to pursue the work that I'm kind of having this trajectory, like, I'll probably work with more galleries. If you're listening, galleries, talk to me. I don't know. I don't even know what galleries I want to work with. But
What's that, Blanton retail?
y'all think you can sell this?
Was
Um,
Blanton a good place for you?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, that was a good relationship.
Seems like I thought they were quite for
Well, that's
quite a
not good
while.
because they haven't bought in a long time. It's just sitting there, I guess. No, but no, that was a good. You know, I've had a lot of great accounts, but I started saying no to people maybe in like probably 2020, and I just started doing more shows. I don't do a lot of shows, but I do a handful of shows. You know, I sort of piecemeal a little living, I guess. You know, I teach and I have my online thing, and I've got, you know, I do shows, and I don't know, it's working so far. I think there's some, I hope that there's some bigger things kind of on the horizon here. I'm kind of excited about what's going on here, color-wise.
Could you explain how you do the crackle finish? Maybe
Sure.
You mentioned the underglaze, but
It's simple. It's just a glaze I developed that does that. It's got a material, it's got magnesium carbonate in it. There you know.
That's not sodium silicate?
It's not. Sodium silicate will give that effect if you do it in the wet phase and you put it on there and then you expand it from, you know, in the making process. But that, you could I haven't done it, but I imagine you could formulate it to go on to greenware. I wouldn't, because it lives somewhere between being a slip and a glaze, but it's more of a glaze. And I put it onto bisqueware, so I call it a glaze, and I think most people would, but it does sort of, I feel like it has a toe in both places. Glaze.
so this is something you've developed, not something you can buy to get that effect.
You can buy, I mean, you can buy it, but I mean, I make this, but there are people that sell it, and I don't know how they do it with a conscience, because, like, if I were to bottle this and sell it to you, like, you're not going to have success. I mean, you will eventually, maybe, but protect your kiln shelves, because
Wow.
there's a reason why it's not on the bottom of things, okay? It does not like inverted surfaces. There's a reason why my forms are a certain way. You know, like, I used to try to be, you know, me defying and popping hollow handle lids and stuff because I'm too stubborn. You know, I put it on the bottom of a bowl, and it's like, how many of those bowls do you think you're going to let just the glaze fall off of before you smarten up and say that's not going to work? You know, there are ways around it. Like, I could, you know, put it in a bowl and fire the water down without any glaze on the rim. You know, the problem solving. I don't make a lot of bowls either because this has not been a thing that's been successful for me.
I wondered if you did make that crackle glaze.
Yeah, and so if that's something you want to pursue in your life and your work, find a base glaze you like and start adding in magnesium carbonate in 10% increments in a line blend and see what you like. You know, yeah, easy. Or 50-50 NEFSI magnesium carbonate is kind of the common one, but mine, I can't remember exactly what's in it. I mean, it's probably like Frit 3124 or P311, the same, I guess. It wouldn't have to be that. It's just I never bothered to reformulate the glaze, so I'm just like, yeah, it's a little expensive, but I don't really care. It's not that expensive. So the mileage I get out of it. So there's some of that. There's some NEFSI. There's some Minspar. There's some maybe some EPK. Maybe some silica. And magnesium carbonate. So there you go. Bottle it, sell it. It's, you know, it's more the finesse with it, like, because I've ruined a lot of kiln shelves, you know, and you know, then you just, I still will get it on my shelves. And by the way, what I protect my shelves with, I don't use kiln wash. I use just grog. You know grog. Sprinkle it on there. It's like ceramic kitty litter. Especially with this stuff, it lands in clumps, and then you can just like pluck it off. I mean, sometimes you gotta grind it, but you know, we're gonna get water in a can at some point, maybe. I don't know. Nobody cares. This gives me something to do while I'm talking.
You have to form the edge a certain way so the water doesn't just.
Out of this? On a teapot, yes. Like, but on the watering can, it's gonna get that on there anyway. So it's gonna be whatever this, you know, has. And then I think, you know, there's probably some smart displacement equation about like how big those holes are in volume into how many holes these are. I don't know.
It's not a problem.
It's not a problem, but it is a problem on something like this. I mean, yes, this is functional, but nobody's going to use it. I don't expect anyone to use it, right? It's like someone who collects teapots, and it's like it'll sit on a shelf, you know, collect dust and be a trophy, I guess. But yeah, I mean, you do need your edges to be sharp, or they'll dribble, you know. So I do try to, you know, like on the latest batch I didn't do all this darting, that they come off like this, and then there's another, it comes up like this, and then there's another little bit that just shorty tips off there, and then they're cut flush and clean, so that there's a sharp edge to cut the water if someone were to choose to use it, which they probably won't. I know it gets boring. I have more jokes. Yeah, so I do cut a hole for this part, Bridget. Like, this will make you happy.
Well,
Right?
you know.
Like, because this part, you know, I just put a little kiss right there, and then, yeah, all right, I'll wrap it up. I'm losing the crowd here. It's like one of my classes.
They just live far away.
You've said that I have this magic power. Oh yeah, I have to cut the hole first. So, like, that if I leave a room for 5 minutes, I can make every student disappear. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Superpower. So normally I try to be a little more careful about that, but I can tell everyone's in a hurry. Right now I'm debating what makes more sense. It probably in real life would, this is really heavy, I probably threw this a little thicker than I usually make a bunch, like options, you know, if I'm making parts, like, so I have choices. And then plus I would have trimmed it, so it would have shaved some of the weight off, but that is quite heavy. So a way that I would solve that is, you know, it's not rocket surgery, I'm sure. I'm not refilling it. You're welcome, thanks for coming. You know, as I would, well, I wouldn't use one, maybe I'd use one of these, but, you know, I'd probably put this together. Let's just do it quickly to get through it, you know. People have lives to get back to. Right? You know, like, just give yourself a little.
So did you just wedge that inside the hole?
What's that?
Did you just wedge that inside the hole in the end? Oh, no, stuck on.
I just stuck it. I mean, I should have. I didn't score that, scratch and attach that, as they say. Scratch and attach, which is way nicer than slipping and scoring, right? Scratching and attaching is so much nicer. Scratch and attach. Flip and score, so ugly. Huh?
Sounds like
So that's like not very elegant, but it's what's happening. And maybe I would. That's way too long. whatever proportions. Who cares, right? We can trim it down. But the idea is to then have something that, oh, that got wet. Split. But, you know, I would probably actually use a lug of clay and give that a little stilt while it was drying. And by the time it was dry, it would likely be strong enough to move on its own, but in the dry, you know, and the nice thing about it, I'm sure you all know this, what am I doing telling you guys? You guys are all professionals. Well, like, you know, because you use clay because it's going to also shrink with a similar, at least similar rate. Can't count on it being exactly the same because, you know, volumes and proportions and things. But usually I found by the time this thing shrinks away, this thing is strong enough. And if it's really a problem, like if you had some crazy precarious sculpture with all these appendages, roll yourself out a big fat slab, build everything on the slab, on the kiln shelf, and then get a hydraulic thing, and then roll it into the kiln, you know, and make a press mold. So I guess we'll let you guys go unless you guys have any questions for me or want me to talk about something else. Or...
Does that not sag in the glaze wiring?
Sometimes. No, I have one very, like, you know, it's probably that long, and it's not this mold, but it's similar. It's like that. It's a mold based on like a tubing or a hose or something like that, and it sagged a little, but didn't crack at the joint, so that was okay.
That's okay.
You know, and it was very, it was very precarious. So, yeah, that was nice that it survived. Yeah.
You mentioned that was longer than you'd like. Can you talk about what proportions?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd probably prefer that this be like level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no right or wrong, but you know, you just kind of think about like, I don't know, scale, proportion. Like, yeah, there's no system for exact success or like what humans view as aesthetically pleasing, but I feel like a lot of that information can be gleaned from like the elements and principles of art and design. It's like, go to that, pick 4 of those things, apply those to the thing you're working on. Bravo, people like your thing. I don't know. I told you more than I know, but I think that that's kind of true. We're pretty simple. Contrast, and then also have contrast in your work. If it's too light or too dark, I don't know, we just like contrast. No rules, but what else?
But when you use the drill bits to make holes, do you use a power drill?
I sometimes, but a lot of times I'll just kind of do this, you know, and like there's definitely smarter tools out there that exist that you can do, but I just, you know, always have drill bits around.
I think power drill's fine.
I've used, sometimes, I will use a power drill a lot of times, but sometimes it's, if I'm trying to be, you know, precise,
Oh,
you know, like I will, you know, just prefer to use my fingers. That can be more surgical. Oh yeah, one more thing to share. Here's a smart solution for your platters. A little French hook, French cleat. You can hang them, you know. There you go. It's a painting. You know, I know it's not interesting on the back, but you know, it's this curse that potters have. It's like, imagine you went to, you know, you bought a painting and then you turned around on the back and got mad because there wasn't a painting on the back of the painting. Right? But potters, we have to like consider that, right? It's like, how embarrassing. There's not a painting on the back of the painting. You know. Hope that was worth your time.
Yeah.
I hope Sarah does a really good job of editing that.
Oh, there's not going to be any edits.